Hello，大家好，又係我高B哥啊！喺時間提醒大家飲水啦，增添智慧，增添水分，智慧如水啊！喂，今日呢個片段咧真係非常之咁精彩啊！大家一定要打醒12分精神去睇，因為點解咁講呢？嗱，上次咧阿教授咧喺出連續劇系列嘅時候咧就提咗咧，就話江學勤教授咧有個非常準確嘅 model。即係嗰個大模型啊，點樣可以咧擺啲乜嘢嘅條件落個大模型裏邊？居然咧喺3個預測裏邊咧已經中咗2個。第一個咧就話咧特朗普啊將會當選。喂，記住啊，唔係馬後炮嚟㗎，人哋個大模型2年之前就已經咧係有呢個答案出嚟㗎。咁啊，特朗普啊啱啱做咗1年總統啫，即係話喺佢選之前嘅1年已經出咗呢個答案㗎啦。OK， 咁啊，第二個答案咧就係話咧，跟住喺今年嘅時間咧就會咧係打伊朗，佢啊擺咗啲即係資料落去嗰個大模型裏邊咧，係完全估算到咧成個世界嘅走向咧，去到咧某時某刻咧必定咧要喺某個地方動手，咁咧先至能夠解決咧呢個美國自己嘅難題，又或者背後嘅陰謀㗎。咁所以咧，佢就擺埋第二個嘅答案出嚟，就係話今年之內，即係今年嘅時間咧就會打伊朗，咁啊。又中晒啦，係咪？又中晒啦。咁第三個咧嘅判斷就話美國會喺今次呢個伊朗嘅戰爭嗰度咧係輸咗落嚟㗎。OK， 咁啊片段裏邊咧我費事咧就踢爆啦。裏邊係咁以咧即係講到咧有關於咧美國而家咧嗰個狀況係點。咁跟住咧點解會有咁樣嘅狀況？嗱，跟住落嚟咧英國名嘴嘅 Pierce 咧就問佢啊，咁跟住個走向會係點？咁去到片段最尾嘅時候咧，佢講咗一啲咧，我認為咧佢擺咗落去佢個大模型裏邊嘅最重要嘅因素。咁有好多人咧就覺得哇，天方夜譚啦！你講啲嘢根本冇可能嘅。咁但係嗱，佢就最後都答咗個答案啦，就話好多人都認為咧呢啲咧係陰謀論者，又或者咧根本咧係咧即係攞嚟講天方夜譚啊、神話故事啊，攞嚟氹人哋啊、呃眼球啊、呃流量咁樣噶。咁但係咧，如果佢真係將佢頭先即係喺個片段尾嗰度講出嚟嗰啲資訊咧，擺埋落個大模型裏邊嚟講咧，又好似真係咧而家咧得出嚟嘅答案咧，你冇辦法咧去否認佢嘅答案就係啱，佢嘅預測就係啱，甚至乎啊，阿 Pierce 咧就話咧，你用呢個字眼叫做 speculations， 即係喺度咧猜啊、估啊咁樣去講咧係唔啱嘅。你呢個係 prediction， 你呢個係預計嘅。係真係有基礎，就唔係亂咁猜、亂咁估噶，係咪？咁所以咧，喂 ，come on， 一定要咧打醒12分精神咧，聽一聽阿江教授咧講啲咩嘢。嗱，可能做最後高B哥，你唔係咁追捧佢係嘛？你真係當佢神咁樣。嗱，我加多個講法俾你聽啦。我咧就認為咧，佢咧就係某一個方向嘅某啲代理人嚟噶。咁啊，所以咧點解佢嗰啲嘢咧就準得咁交關？咁啊，差唔多咧可以咁講就係，大約咧佢哋嗰個劇本啊，又或者咧未來呢幾年咧佢哋嗰個即係計劃方向咧已經有咗喺度。唔知大家有冇印象咧？有本雜誌叫做 The Economist， 係咪？咁我都話俾你聽，我睇咗好多年㗎啦嘛。The Economist， 我真係僆仔嘅時候睇，佢咧每年咧都會咧喺嗰個封面嗰度啊，即係年頭嘅時候咧，就有一個封面故事。咁就話咧，即係10大估計咁樣啦。咁啊，類似就咁講法，就係話喂，今年咧會行邊個方向，行邊個方向。唉，我都係講嗰句，我哋平民百姓就餐揾餐食，餐餐清，成日睇眼前事。但係佢哋呢啲咧已經係去到咧，佢哋認為佢哋嘅級數咧係管理成個世界，同埋咧係點樣帶住個世界走嘅話咧，其實佢哋一早心中有數咧，係要向邊個方向行。咁我哋中國咧就好好啊。因為我哋咧非常之咁清楚清晰咧，我哋中國自己嘅路向係點樣行。嗱，至於世界係點樣行咧，我哋咧係有配合，但係亦都有咧係逆流而行噶。咁啊有陣時咧世界想咁行，但係我哋認為呢個唔適合我哋中國，唔啱我哋中國嘅話咧，我哋自己咧就唔會咁樣行。咁所以咧喺個世界裏邊咧就會有干擾啦，就話喂，全世界都咁行，做咩你唔跟埋一齊行啊？你唔跟住我一齊行，不特止，你而家做緊嘅嘢咧，就令到我認為要帶向嗰個風向行唔到喎。嗱，咁啊唔好意思啦，我哋中國咧喺未有實力之前咧，冇辦法啦。你講乜咪耷低個頭 ，yes yes， 咁啊做咗先，因為我哋要忍辱負重啊。其實暗地裏我哋繼續做緊我哋自己嘅嘢㗎，係咪？但到今日為止唔係啦，因為咧你就算想收埋 你都生到咁大件頭啦，你點收得埋先得㗎？你收唔埋嘅時候就有收唔埋嘅處理手法㗎啦嘛，啱唔啱？咁所以咧嗱，中國咧係好堅定咁樣行自己嘅路啊！高B哥呢一陣間咧嘗試下咧攞多少少資料啊！我唔想有人講我又講就咁話，特朗普話推遲1個月嚟，咁點解？同埋中國點樣嘅反應啫？仲有啦，有咩嘅旁敲之節令到最後係咪真係1個月之後就嚟到先？定係根本嚟都嚟唔到先？嗱，睇下有冇資料咧可以支持我呢個諗法咧，去同大家做影片，好嗎？咁而家咧，不如咧就去咗片俾大家睇先。嗱，真係啊嚇，佢咧講得非常之咁清楚，個邏輯啊一步一步咁樣去講俾你聽噶。希望咧大家咧喺裏邊能夠咧知道咧佢嗰個大模型係點得出嚟，同埋佢嘅估算咧未來之後咧係點樣嘅走向噶。而家去片。
Professor Zhang is a game theorist, best known for his popular predictive history YouTube channel, where he applies his systems of analysis to the past in order to predict the future. Back in 2024, he predicted that Trump would win the presidency, that Trump would go to war with Iran, and that the US would lose that war. This has sparked a flurry of interest in both his work and his rather colourful adjacent opinions. Professor Zhang joins me now. Professor Zhang, thank you very much indeed for joining me on Uncensored.
Hi, Piers.
Let me start with these 3 big predictions, because you've been proven obviously completely right about 2 of them, and the 3rd one is now unfurling before our eyes. Are you confident that you'll be proven right with the 3rd prediction, that Iran ultimately will prevail in this war?
Right. So right now, the United States and Iran are fighting a war of attrition. The United States is trying to degrade Iran's military capacity, and Iran is trying to strangle the world economy. And it turns out that Iran is putting a lot of pressure on the GCC. And I think at the end of the day, the United States will be compelled to send ground forces. Once the United States sends in ground forces, there's no turning back. It's all in. The sunk cost fallacy kicks in. It'll be another Vietnam for the United States, because Iran is a mountain fortress. And the United States right now doesn't have the manpower, the manufacturing capacity, and the political will to fight a long war of attrition on the ground in Iran.
Right, so I think because of what you've said at the end there, it's highly unlikely that Trump would commit ground forces, because he's always pledged not to, and I think he would see the inherent danger of that. So if he doesn't commit ground forces, how do you see this war playing out?
Well, right now, if Trump doesn't commit ground troops, he does have a variety of options. The first option is just to simply declare victory and call it a day. Unfortunately, the problem with that is that U.S. bases are still exposed. The GCC economies are still under pressure. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed. And there are no signs that Iran is interested in peace negotiations. Iran feels as though it has the upper hand because it has the political will and the resources to draw this war out. Now, let's assume that Trump does withdraw from the Middle East. Then what happens is that the GCC nations of Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, UAE now are forced to pay a ransom to Iran because they supply the world with their oil through the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the world's oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz. But in return, they get food. So the GCC nations import anywhere from 80 to 90% of their food from overseas. And so basically the center of gravity shifts from the petrodollar to whatever financial system that Iran wants to focus on. And it could be BRICS, it could be gold, it could be anything. But remember, the problem with that is that the US economy is a Ponzi scheme. It is dependent on the GCC investing in AI and tech stocks, in startups like Uber in order to finance the US economy. If this financing stopped, then the US economy could face collapse. And this means that these young men could not afford their OnlyFans anymore, and this could lead to a revolution in the streets. So the consequences for America would be dire if America were to retreat from the Middle East.
I mean, it seems that the key part of all this sort of economic strangulation, if you like, by Iran is the Strait of Hormuz. We've already seen in the last few hours today that the successor to Ayatollah Khomeini, his son, has come out, and apparently we haven't seen him or heard from him directly, but there's a statement in which he talks about keeping the Strait of Hormuz closed indefinitely. If that was to happen, what would be the consequences for the global economy, and how soon would we see those consequences?
Well, I mean, the consequences would be dire because cheap energy, cheap petroleum products are the very basis of the global modern economy. So it just wouldn't be jet fuel that would be affected. It would also be food because remember, food is produced by fertilizer, which comes from the GCC as well as sulfuric acid, which helps the process of some semiconductor production. So artificial intelligence, food production, global travel are all dependent on products from the GCC. It's only been 2 weeks that the Strait of Hormuz has been closed for almost 2 weeks now, and already we're seeing high oil prices surpassing $100 a barrel. Iran says that they want to move it to $200 a barrel, which signals that they want the Strait of Hormuz closed for months. Now remember, even if Iran were to open up the Strait of Hormuz, it would take weeks before oil production continues. So I think for the global economy, I think we've reached the point of no return. And in the future, global economies have to commit to a bit of deindustrialization and even mercantilism in order to survive future shocks. So if you go to Southeast Asia, Vietnam and Thailand have already ordered the government workers to work from home in order to save fuel.
You've pointed out that the Gulf Cooperation Council monarchies, the GCC, as you've alluded to several times here, are structurally unusual states because they're propped up by oil, desalination, they don't have their own water supply naturally, and American protection. You say correctly, they were built in open desert with no food security, as you said, 80% imported, no water security, the desalination dependency, no geographic defenses, they're flat, exposed terrain, no demographic cohesion. In places like Dubai, for example, 90% of the population are expats, and no independent security architecture reliant on the US, who have bases, obviously, in many of the states there. If you put all this together, is what's happening now, in terms of the tactics that Iran are deploying, including the threats to desalination, but also targeting, obviously, targeted hotels and airports and so on, going to the heart of what the states there would like to see as the future of their economy, which is tourism, sport, entertainment, clearly designed to scare people away from that. Is this now representing an existential threat, do you think, to the business model of the GCC states going forward?
Right. So the most vulnerable city and often the most glamorous city in the GCC is Dubai. And for many years, Dubai has been very successful in cultivating an image as the new city of London, as the new Hong Kong of the Middle East. And thousands of these millionaires flock to Dubai for the glamorous lifestyle as well as the tax-free aspect of the city. But the reality is that this was all premised on global peace, on Pax Americana, on the capacity of America to project power all around the world and provide security guarantees to the GCC. Now this aura of inevitability and invincibility of American empire has been shattered. And once an illusion is shattered, there's actually no coming back from this. And that's what people don't really appreciate about this war. This war is not just directed at Israel. This war is not directed just at the GCC and the illusion of American empire. This war is directed at American empire itself. And what people don't appreciate is the eschatological aspects of this war, in that Iran sees a moral duty, a moral imperative from God to destroy the great Satan, which is the American empire. And the base of the American empire, of course, is the global economy.
Right. At the heart and the head of the American economy is the President of the United States. You've argued that Trump is not the most powerful person in America, and you've inferred that actually the real power base is Israel. Explain that.
Right. So I actually don't say the real power base is Israel. What I say is that the real power base are a collection of secret societies that have an eschatological view of this war. And these secret societies include the Freemasons, which are now called the Rosicrucians and the Knights Templars. They include Jewish organizations called the Sephardim Frankists, who are embedded in religious movements called Shabbat Lubavitch. And then you have the Jesuits. You have a collection of secret societies. And they believe that a war in the Middle East would start a process that would culminate in the end times and the return of Jesus, the arrival of the Jewish Messiah, the building of a one world government. They have different eschatologies, but a lot of their time frames do align. So where they converge is that there has to be a war in the Middle East to kick things off. This war in the Middle East will lead to the defeat of the American Empire, and this will lead to the culmination of the Greater Israel Project, where Israel is able to control the Middle East from the Nile to the Euphrates. Once the Greater Israel Project is in place, it will transform into the Pax Judaica, which is an AI surveillance state. This will eventually lead to the war of Gog and Magog, the destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the building of the Third Temple, the return of the Jewish diaspora to Jerusalem, and the arrival of the Jewish Messiah or the Antichrist. So they have the scripted out. And unfortunately, a lot of world events are conforming to this script.
Right. I mean, a lot of people say a lot of what you've just said is a load of fantastical baloney and driven by anti-Semitic tropes. What do you say to that?
Look, I completely sympathize with this argument. 5 years ago, I would have said the same thing about this sort of argument and thinking. So what I do is predictive modeling, okay? Meaning that I'm going to throw some theories out there. And then based on these theories, I'm going to extrapolate into the future and see what the predictions are. If these predictions are correct, then my theories ought to have some legitimacy. Now, when I teach, I don't engage in historical analysis. I engage in speculative analysis. And so in 2024, 2 years ago, I did say that this war in Iran would happen, and I provided a lot of my analysis. And a part of my analysis that's very important is the eschatological analysis, meaning that Christian Zionists control the United States. There's a preacher called John Hagee who runs an organization called Christians United for Israel, which has about 7 million members. Christian Zionists are heavily embedded in the national security apparatus and in the Pentagon. There's reporting that U.S. commanders have told their troops that this is a war to bring back Jesus and to be not afraid. So that's my argument. Like, I don't want to believe this, but because this war in Iran is happening, I'm forced to conclude that some of my speculative analysis has validity. Otherwise,
I think to be honest, I think the word speculation doesn't quite do it justice. I mean, look, there's no doubt your predictions so far have been proven to be uncannily accurate in relation to Trump winning and then going to war with Iran. But I think the idea that this is all part of a plot to bring back Jesus Christ, look, there might be some people out there that carry such a phrase. I think it's highly unlikely, unless any evidence emerges to the contrary, that they are current commanders in the United States military. But Professor Zhang, you have a big following. Lots of people are interested in your predictive analysis. It's good to have you on Uncensored. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pierre.
好啦，翻嚟啦吓，精彩啊！嗱， 裏邊咧有啲資訊咧，可能咧你唔會100%同意都未定嘅，咁冇乜所謂嘅，因為咧人哋咧已經解釋俾你聽，佢自己咧用乜嘢嘅即係方向啊，跟住咧去有個咩嘅思維模式去諗呢件事。咁我哋咧只係攞嚟作為參考。喂，若要人似你，就除非兩個你有冇可能諗到佢諗到嘅嘢一模一樣先得㗎？但係啊，值唔值得大家去即係觀察同埋留意咧？嗱，只要佢最尾嗰度講啊，6個組織。佢咧係管理成個世界，咁呢個咧就等同咧我成日講咧個金主政治咧有相類似嘅。咁當然佢唔單止係金主嗰個角色，呢班金主咧喺社會上面咧好有能力，咁啊跟住咧亦都咧係影響到好多個國家咧佢哋嗰個嘅運作㗎。咁啊至於你話喂係咪講到咁神奇啊咁我都係成日反問大家啦。咁歐洲以往嗰啲貴族啊，嗰啲好有權勢嗰啲人啊，百年家族啊，去晒邊度啊？佢哋唔運用佢哋嘅錢同埋影響力，咁佢喺度，你以為佢做緊乜嘢呢？唔通佢哋真係個個都發善心做好人？唔會啩？但係又唔係個個都係咁壞嘅，又唔好咁樣諗到偏埋一邊。不過呢，將呢樣嘢呢擺喺自己嘅知識庫裏邊，不停咧喺度挑戰自己嘅思維，唔係嘅，冇佢哋份，冇佢哋份。好似咧阿 Pierce 咧最尾皮亞斯咧最後講嗰個咋。除非佢哋能夠提出一啲反證，如果唔係嘅話呢，又真係有陣時好難去辯駁㗎。咁所以呢，我哋咧一路咧觀察住個世界嘅時候呢，每一樣嘢我哋都擺入去我哋個估算裏邊，但係就唔需要咧100%相信，因為都係講嗰句，媒體冇俾你睇到全面嘅畫面，可能我哋只係知道冰山一角嘅啫。我自豪，因我多角度思考。晏啲再見，拜拜。